1 year had passed since the Galactic Council declared humanity illegal, and the galaxy was no longer the same place. The crystal towers of Zerion Prime still reached toward the purple sky, but the chambers where 47 species had once ruled in unity now echoed with empty seats and bitter arguments. Half the council members had abandoned their posts, and the others could barely agree on what day it was. President Carl Walker stood at the entrance to the Grand Council chamber. But he was not alone. Behind him walked representatives of 30 different species, some former council members who had chosen freedom over control, others liberated from centuries of suppression. The Corvani engineer Vexno walked beside Dr. Helen Rodriguez there. Shared experience of imprisonment, creating an unlikely friendship. The Helix shapeshifter 26 moved in her natural form, no longer hiding what she was from those who had feared her people's adaptability. Ambassador Zefkar remained in his council seat, but his scaled hands shook as he watched the procession enter the chamber. His own people, the Vorthan Empire, had split into 3 factions. The traditionalists still supported the old order, but they were outnumbered by younger Vorthans, who admired human innovation, and older ones who were tired of maintaining an empire built on lies. The war that had raged across the galaxy for the past 6 months had not been fought with massive fleets and planet-destroying weapons, as everyone had expected. Instead, it had been a conflict of ideas, technologies, and the fundamental question of what galactic civilization should become. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted from his old rank of captain, had led the human forces not in conquest, but in demonstration. First major battle had taken place at the Altair Junction, a critical hyperspace nexus that connected 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The Gelti had controlled this junction for 4,000 years, using it to regulate trade and movement throughout their territory. Their fleet was ancient, but massive, powered by crystal matrices that had been perfected over millennia. Commander Lisa Carter had led the human strike force that challenged Gelti control of the junction. Her ships were smaller and fewer in number, but they used tactics that the crystalline beings had never encountered. Instead of meeting the Gelti fleet in direct confrontation, the human ships had adapted their approach during the battle itself. Human vessels seemed to predict every move the Gelti made, not through superior sensors or intelligence, but through their ability to recognize patterns and adapt faster than their opponents could change strategy. When the Gelti formed defensive walls, the humans flowed around them like water. When they concentrated firepower, the humans dispersed and struck from unexpected angles. When they tried to retreat, the humans were already positioned to cut off their escape routes. The battle lasted 8 hours and ended not with the destruction of the Gelti fleet, but with their surrender. The crystalline beings, who had thought in terms of eternal stability and unchanging order, found themselves facing an enemy that could evolve during combat. It was a demonstration of everything the Council feared about humanity, but the most shocking moment came when Lisa Carter opened communication channels to offer the Gelti terms. She did not demand their submission or the destruction of their civilization. Instead, she invited them to join the growing alliance of species seeking a new form of galactic government. Some of the younger Gelti accepted immediately, tired of their elders' rigid thinking and eager to explore new possibilities. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as human forces encountered council fleets. The humans did not fight to destroy their enemies, but to prove that cooperation was more powerful than control. Dr. Maya Singh's hybrid technologies gave human ships capabilities that seemed impossible, but humanity shared these innovations freely. With any species willing to embrace change, the Nefri had been among the first to join the human alliance officially, their aquatic cities becoming centers of technological cooperation where species that had been enemies for millennia worked together on projects that benefited everyone. The Kalani followed, bringing their deep understanding of quantum mechanics and their enthusiasm for exploration. Even some of the older species began to question whether the Council's way was truly the best path forward. The energy beings of the Vextar Collective had observed galactic politics for eons without taking sides, but they became fascinated by humanity's approach to problem-solving. Their vast intelligence networks began providing information to the Resistance, helping coordinate actions across impossible distances. Dr. Alex Turner had spent the war years working with the liberated representatives of the 7 suppressed species, helping them rebuild connections with scattered survivors of their peoples. What they discovered changed everyone's understanding of galactic history. The supposedly extinct or contained species had not disappeared. They had gone into hiding, preserving their knowledge and culture while waiting for someone to challenge the Council's authority. The Corvani had been secretly maintaining their engineering expertise in hidden workshops throughout the galaxy. The Helix had used their shape-changing abilities to infiltrate other species and gather intelligence about Council activities. 5 other civilizations had each developed their own methods of survival and resistance. Together, these forgotten peoples brought technologies and perspectives that had been suppressed for thousands of years. They showed the galaxy what innovation looked like when it was not restricted by the Council's fear of change. Fusion reactors that could power entire star systems, faster-than-light communication that worked across galactic distances, medical techniques that could extend the lifespan of any species indefinitely. The Council's final stand came not in a great battle, but in a desperate attempt to maintain relevance. The remaining members gathered in their crystal chamber and tried to negotiate a peace that would preserve their authority while making minor concessions to the rebellion. They offered to allow limited human expansion and restricted technological development under Council supervision. President Walker listened to their proposal with the patience of someone who had already won. He stood in the same spot where Ambassador Istkar had declared humanity illegal 1 year earlier, but the dynamics had completely changed. The humans were no longer the ones seeking acceptance into galactic civilization. They had become the architects of a new form of civilization that the galaxy was choosing to embrace. "Your offer assumes that we need your permission to exist," President Walker said quietly. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, reaching the few remaining Council members and the billions of beings watching across the galaxy. "But we learned something important this year. The galaxy doesn't need to be managed or controlled. It needs to be free to grow and explore and change." The formal surrender came not as a signed document, but as an acknowledgement of reality. The Galactic Council had lost its authority not through military defeat, but through obsolescence. The younger species had found a better way to organize galactic civilization, and the older species were welcome to join if they could accept that their time as rulers was over. The transformation that followed was swift and comprehensive. The former prison world of Kethmer was renamed Haven and became the new galactic capital. The massive facility that had once held political prisoners was converted into a research center where representatives of every species could work together on projects that had been impossible under the Council's restrictive oversight. Amy Brooks, now commanding the exploration vessel Pathfinder, led the first joint species mission beyond the galactic rim. Her crew included humans, Kalani, Nefri, Corvani, Helix, and even some younger Gelti who wanted to see what lay beyond the boundaries of known space. They were not expanding to conquer or control new territories, but to discover what wonders awaited in the vast unknown dot. The new galactic government was unlike anything that had existed before. Instead of a ruling council that made decisions for everyone, it was a cooperative network where each species contributed according to their strengths and interests. The Corvani rebuilt the galaxy's infrastructure using designs that had been suppressed for millennia. The Nefri developed communication systems that connected every inhabited world. The humans provided the coordination and innovation that kept everything working together. Dr. Maya Singh established the first Galactic Technology Institute on Haven, where scientists from every species could share knowledge without restrictions or oversight. The breakthroughs that emerged from this cooperation were staggering. Energy sources that could power galactic civilization for millions of years. Transportation systems that could move entire populations between star systems safely. Terraforming. Techniques that could create habitable worlds in previously impossible environments. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about itself. The old council had maintained order through fear of change and control of development. The new civilization embraced change as the fundamental force that drove all life toward greater possibilities. Instead of trying to prevent species from growing and evolving, the galactic community encouraged and supported such development.
Captain Jake Morrison stared at the strange readings on his screen. The exploration ship UES Horizon had been mapping empty space for 3 months. Now the instruments showed something that should not exist. "Sir, we have a problem," said Navigation Officer Kelly Brooks. Her voice was tight with worry. "The hyperspace jump went wrong. We are not where we should be." Jake looked at the star charts. Nothing matched. The constellations were all wrong. Even worse, his sensors picked up massive energy signatures nearby. "Ships. Lots of them." "How many?" Jake asked. "At least 50, sir. Maybe more. They are big. Much bigger than anything we have ever built." Dr. Alan Carter looked up from his science station. He was the ship's expert on alien life. For years, he had studied the possibility of meeting other intelligent beings. Now it seemed his work was about to become very important. "Captain, I am reading multiple ship designs. This is not one species. This looks like a fleet from many different worlds." Before Jake could respond, the communication system came alive. A deep voice spoke in perfect English. The translator systems had worked faster than anyone thought possible. "Unknown vessel. You have entered Zephyrian space without permission. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Jake felt his heart sink. First contact with aliens, and it was starting with threats. He had always hoped this moment would be peaceful. He had dreamed of sharing knowledge and friendship with beings from other worlds. Instead, he was looking at what appeared to be a war fleet. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Horizon. We mean no harm. We are explorers from the planet Earth. We became lost during a hyperspace experiment." The response came quickly. "Earth is now under the protection of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately. Your planet has been selected for integration into the Empire." Jake exchanged glances with his crew. Integration sounded like a polite word for conquest. He had studied enough history to know what happened when powerful civilizations met weaker ones. "I need to contact my government," Jake said. "This is a matter that requires discussion between our leaders." "There is nothing to discuss. The Empire has decided. You have 1 standard day to return to your world and arrange surrender. If Earth does not comply, we will take it by force." The transmission ended. Jake stood in silence for a long moment. His small exploration ship was surrounded by an alien armada. His planet was being threatened by beings with technology far beyond human understanding. "Sir, what are our orders?" asked Lieutenant Paul Martinez, the ship's tactical officer. Jake thought carefully. The Horizon carried no weapons. It was built for exploration, not war. Even if it had guns, 50 alien warships would destroy it in seconds. "We go home," Jake said. "Earth needs to know what is coming." The journey back to Earth took 18 hours. During that time, Jake sent detailed reports to Earth Defense Command. He included every scan, every recording, every piece of data about the alien fleet. Dr. Carter spent the trip studying the alien transmissions. He found patterns in their language that worried him. "Captain, I think these Zephyrians have done this before. Many times. The way they speak, the procedures they follow, it all suggests this is routine for them." "You mean they conquer planets regularly?" "More than that. I think they have built an empire by absorbing other species. The multiple ship designs we saw support this theory. Those were not allies fighting together. Those were conquered peoples serving their masters. When the horizon reached Earth, Jake found chaos waiting for him. Earth Defense Command had mobilized every available ship. The news of alien contact had spread across the planet in hours. Some people celebrated the discovery of intelligent life. Others prepared for war. Commander Lisa Hayes met Jake at the orbital station. She was Earth's top defense coordinator, a woman who had spent 20 years preparing for threats from space. She had always expected those threats to come from asteroids or solar flares. She had never planned for alien invasion. "Captain Morrison, I need everything you know about these Zephyrians," she said. Jake handed over his complete files. "Commander, they were not interested in negotiation. They spoke like Earth had already been conquered, like it was just a matter of paperwork." Lisa studied the data. The alien ships were massive. Their technology appeared centuries ahead of human science. Traditional military thinking suggested Earth could not win a direct fight. "How long do we have?" she asked. They said 1 day for surrender. That was yesterday. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding across the station. Long-range sensors had detected the alien fleet approaching Earth. They had arrived exactly on schedule. The Zephyrian fleet took position above Earth. 50 massive ships arranged themselves in perfect formation. Their weapons remained powered down, but their message was clear. They were strong enough to destroy human civilization without effort. High Commander Vexitar, leader of the Zephyrian fleet, opened communications with Earth. His image appeared on screens across the planet. He looked humanoid but taller, with gray skin and large dark eyes. His uniform was covered in symbols that suggested high rank and many victories. "People of Earth," he said, "the Zephyrian Empire welcomes you to the galactic community. Your world will be protected and guided by the Empire. Your resources will be managed efficiently. Your people will find purpose serving the greater good. In return, you must surrender all military forces immediately. Your governments will be dissolved. Earth will be administered by imperial governors. Those who cooperate will be treated well. Those who resist will be removed." The transmission continued for several minutes. Vextar explained how the integration process worked. He showed images of other conquered worlds. Some looked peaceful and prosperous. Others showed the ruins of civilizations that had chosen to fight. "You have until tomorrow to announce your surrender," Vextar concluded. "After that, we will assume you have chosen resistance. The consequences will be permanent." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. Commander Lisa Hayes stood in the Defense Command Center, surrounded by screens showing the alien fleet. Every leader on Earth was waiting for her recommendation. The president, the military chiefs, the heads of every major nation all looked to her for guidance. She made a decision that would change everything. "Cut all external communications," she ordered. "Complete radio silence. Nothing goes out, nothing comes in." "Ma'am, the aliens are expecting a response," said her aide. "Then they will be disappointed," Lisa said. "Implement Protocol 7 immediately. No one talks to the aliens until I say so." Across the planet, Earth went quiet. The aliens waited for surrender. Instead, they got silence. Dr. Carter, still aboard the Horizon, watched the Zephyrian fleet through his instruments. He noticed something interesting. The aliens seemed confused by Earth's lack of response. They were sending scan after scan toward the planet, as if they could not understand what they were seeing. For the first time since the crisis began, Dr. Carter smiled. Earth had surprised them. The waiting game had begun. 3 months had passed since Earth went silent. The Zephyrian fleet still hung in space above the planet like a sword waiting to fall. High Commander Vexitar paced the bridge of his flagship, growing more frustrated each day. "Still nothing?" he asked his communications officer. "No, sir. Complete silence from the planet surface. No military communications, no civilian broadcasts, no response to our transmissions." Vextar had conquered 47 worlds during his career. Never had. He encountered a species that simply refused to communicate. Some begged for mercy. Others declared war immediately. A few tried to negotiate, but silence? This was new. Perhaps they are primitive, suggested his tactical officer. Maybe they lack the technology to respond. No, Vextar said. We know they have space travel. Their ship that found us was proof of that. And our scans show massive energy signatures across their planet. They have technology. They are choosing not to use it. On Earth, the silence hid frantic activity. In underground bunkers and hidden facilities, humanity was preparing for something the galaxy had never seen. General Frank Stone stood in a command center buried 2 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. Around him, hundreds of technicians worked at computer stations. Giant screens showed progress reports from across the planet. How are the construction schedules? He asked. Colonel Pete Adams consulted his tablet. All major facilities are ahead of schedule. The orbital shipyards have been working around the clock. We now have 43 vessels completed, with 17 more finishing this week. And the crews? Training is complete for the first wave. Marine Sergeant John Kelly reports that all ground forces are ready for deployment. The pilots have logged enough simulator hours to qualify for combat. General Stone nodded. The Nightfall project had been humanity's greatest secret for 20 years. It began as a theoretical exercise. What would Earth do if faced with an overwhelming alien threat? How could humanity fight an enemy with superior technology and numbers? The answer had been surprising. Do not fight the enemy's strengths, fight their assumptions. Engineer Katie Walsh looked up from her workstation. Sir, the power systems are all online. The new fusion reactors are producing energy at rates we never thought possible. We can power the entire fleet from the lunar generators alone. Katie had spent 5 years designing those reactors. They used principles that human science had only recently discovered. The aliens probably had similar technology, but they would not expect humans to have developed it so quickly. What about the special projects? General Stone asked. The deep strike weapons are ready for testing. Dr. Amy Foster's team has completed the first prototype. If it works, we can hit targets anywhere in the solar system with pinpoint accuracy. High above, aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew remained prisoners. They were treated well enough. The aliens seemed curious about human biology and culture, but they were still captives, still separated from their home and families. Dr. Carter had become the unofficial human representative during their captivity. The Zephyrians asked him constant questions about Earth. They wanted to understand human society, human technology, human psychology. Why do your people not respond to our offers? Asked Zephyrian Science Officer Krelnax. We have shown them images of worlds that prospered under imperial rule. We have demonstrated the benefits of cooperation. Dr. Carter chose his words carefully. Humans value independence. We do not like being told what to do by strangers. But surely they understand. The alternative? Resistance leads to destruction. We have shown them the fate of worlds that chose to fight. Maybe that is the problem, Dr. Carter said. You showed them what happens to worlds that fight, but you also showed them what happens to worlds that surrender. From a human perspective, both options end with the loss of freedom. Krelnax seemed confused by this concept. Freedom is less important than survival. Not to humans. The conversation revealed something important. The Zephyrians genuinely believed they were offering Earth a good deal. They could not understand why humans would prefer independence over security. Meanwhile, High Commander Vextar was receiving reports from across the Empire. Other conquered species were watching the situation at Earth with interest. Some were beginning to ask questions they had never asked before. Sir, we are detecting unusual communications from several core worlds, reported his intelligence officer. Subject populations are discussing the Earth situation. Some are expressing admiration for human stubbornness. This was troubling news. The Empire relied on the belief that resistance was hopeless. If other species began to think that defying the Zephyrians was possible, the entire imperial structure could be threatened. What do our analysts recommend? They suggest we resolve the Earth situation quickly. A demonstration of overwhelming force would remind all subject species why cooperation is preferable to resistance. Vextar considered this advice. Perhaps it was time to stop waiting for Earth's surrender. Perhaps it was time to take what the Empire wanted by force. But something held him back. The silence from Earth was beginning to unnerve him. In 3 months, the humans had not sent a single transmission, not even a message telling the Zephyrians to go away. The complete lack of response suggested either total defeat or total preparation. On Earth's lunar surface, construction crews put finishing touches on humanity's greatest engineering project. The Nightfall shipyard stretched across 50 square miles of the moon's far side. Hidden from Earth and shielded from alien sensors, they had been building humanity's response to the Zephyrian threat. Captain Rachel Turner walked through the hangar bay of the UES Vengeance, humanity's first true warship. Unlike the Exploration, vessels that had carried humans to the stars, this ship was built for one purpose: fighting and winning against superior odds. "How does she look, Captain?" asked Chief Engineer Billy Parker. Rachel ran her hand along the ship's hull. The armor was made from materials that had not existed 5 years ago. The weapon systems used principles that human physicists had thought were impossible. The engines could push the ship to speeds that would make alien pursuit difficult. "She looks ready for war," Rachel said. The Vengeance was not alone. 60 ships of various sizes filled the lunar shipyards: fighters, destroyers, heavy cruisers, and vessels that defied traditional classification. Each one incorporated lessons learned from studying the Zephyrian fleet. Each one was designed to exploit weaknesses in alien technology and tactics. But the ships were only part of humanity's preparation. On Earth, Marine Sergeant John Kelly trained soldiers for a new kind of warfare. Traditional military doctrine assumed that battles would be fought between similar forces using similar tactics. The coming war would be different. "Remember," Kelly told his troops, "we are not trying to beat them ship to ship. We cannot match their numbers or their technology. We are going to make them pay a price they are not willing to pay." The training focused on tactics that conventional military thinking would consider wasteful or insane. Kamikaze attacks, suicide missions, strategies that accepted massive losses in exchange for inflicting damage on the enemy. "Sir, these tactics will result in heavy casualties," said Lieutenant Danny Wright. "That's right," Kelly said. "But the aliens expect us to surrender, to avoid those casualties. When we don't, when we keep fighting no matter what it costs, they will have to make a choice. They can keep fighting a war that will drain their resources for years, or they can look for a different solution." In space, the Zephyrian fleet maintained its watch over Earth. Vextar had reduced the alert status twice, convinced that the humans posed no immediate threat. His intelligence suggested that Earth had no meaningful space military. Their exploration ships were lightly armed. Their orbital defenses were minimal. But Dr. Carter, watching from his captivity, noticed things the Zephyrians missed. Supply ships arrived regularly from alien worlds, bringing food, equipment, and replacement crew members. The fleet was clearly prepared for a long occupation, but the crew was getting restless. Boredom was setting in. "They expect this to be easy," he told Captain Morrison during one of their brief conversations. "They have never fought a species that was willing to sacrifice everything for victory." "Do you think Earth is really preparing for war?" Morrison asked. Dr. Carter smiled. "Jake, I have studied human history my entire career. When humans are backed into a corner, they do not surrender. They adapt. They innovate. They find ways to win that their enemies never expected. And if we cannot win, then we make sure our enemies regret ever finding us." As the 3rd month of silence ended, both sides were reaching the limits of patience. The Zephyrians wanted resolution. The humans wanted revenge. High Commander Vextar made his final decision. "Prepare the invasion fleet. If Earth will not surrender, we will take it by force." On Earth, Commander Lisa Hayes received the report from her sensor stations. The alien fleet was changing formation, moving into attack positions. She smiled for the first time in 3 months. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Activate Nightfall Protocol." The waiting was over. At exactly midnight Greenwich Mean Time, Earth's silence ended, not with words but with fire. The first sign was a flash of light from behind the moon. Then another. Then dozens more. High Commander Vextar watched his screens in growing alarm as ship after ship appeared from what his sensors had shown as empty space. Where did they come from? He demanded. His tactical officer stared at the readings. Unknown, sir. Our scans showed nothing in those areas. They must have been using some kind of stealth technology. The human fleet spread across space in perfect formation. 60 warships of unknown design moved with precision that spoke of extensive training. These were not the exploration vessels the Zephyrians had expected. These were ships built for war. Captain Rachel Turner stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the alien fleet through her view screen. For 3 months, Earth had prepared for this moment. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of. All ships report ready, Captain, said her communications officer. Open a channel to the alien fleet, Rachel ordered. On the Zephyrian flagship, Vextar received the transmission he had been waiting 3 months to hear. A human face appeared on his screen. The woman looked calm, confident, and completely unafraid. This is Captain Rachel Turner of the United Earth Defense Force, she said. You have threatened our world. You have demanded our surrender. You have made a mistake. Vextar tried to respond, but the human continued talking. For 3 months, you have waited for us to give up. Instead, we have been preparing. You wanted to conquer Earth? Come and try. The transmission ended. Vextar stared at his screen in confusion. The humans had gone from complete silence to open defiance in seconds. Worse, they had ships that his intelligence had completely missed. Sir, we are receiving another transmission. His communications officer reported. It's coming from the planet surface. This time, Commander Lisa Hayes appeared on the screen. She stood in what looked like a military command center, surrounded by displays showing tactical information. High Commander Vextar, she said. 3 months ago you told us to surrender or face the consequences. You showed us images of worlds that had submitted to your empire. You showed us the ruins of worlds that had resisted. She paused, letting her words sink in. What you failed to understand is that humans do not surrender. We do not submit. We do not kneel. You wanted our world? You have awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. The transmission cut out, leaving the Zephyrian bridge in stunned silence. Dr. Carter, still a prisoner aboard the alien flagship, watched the proceedings with interest. The Zephyrian crew was clearly rattled. They had expected frightened humans, begging for mercy. Instead, they faced an organized military force that seemed eager for battle. This is impossible, muttered Science Officer Krelnax. Our intelligence showed that Earth had minimal space-based defenses. How do they have so many warships? Dr. Carter decided to speak up. You studied our exploration fleet. You never looked for our war fleet. Humans do not have the technology to build ships like these, Krelnax insisted. You might be surprised by what humans can accomplish when properly motivated, Dr. Carter replied. The first engagement began when a squadron of human fighters swept past the Zephyrian outer perimeter. Lieutenant Commander Ben Rodriguez led 12 small craft against alien ships 10 times their size. Remember the plan, he told his pilots. We are not trying to win a dogfight. We are trying to make them hurt. The fighters moved in patterns the Zephyrians had never seen. Instead of trying to avoid enemy fire, they seemed to embrace it. Ships that took damage continued attacking instead of retreating. Pilots whose vessels were crippled rammed their fighters into enemy hulls. 3 Zephyrian destroyers suffered critical damage before the human attack was over. But the cost was high. Only 2 of the 12 human fighters returned to their carrier. Vextar watched the tactical display in shock. Did they just sacrifice 10 ships to damage 3 of ours? It appears so, sir, his tactical officer replied. The humans are using suicide tactics. This was outside all Zephyrian military doctrine. No rational species would trade 10 ships for 3 unless they were desperate. But the humans did not seem desperate. They seemed determined. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet, the communications officer reported. Captain Rachel Turner appeared on screen again. This time she was smiling. "That was just the opening move," she said. "Did you enjoy it? We have 58 ships left. How many of yours can you afford to lose?" The transmission ended before Vexitar could respond. On Earth, the battle was being broadcast to every screen on the planet. Billions of humans watched their military finally reveal itself. The ships, the weapons, the technology that had been developed in secret for decades. General Frank Stone stood in the command center, coordinating the battle from the planet's surface. "Second wave, launch when ready." This time, the human attack came from multiple directions. Heavy cruisers engaged the Zephyrian battle line while destroyers hit their supply vessels. The aliens found themselves fighting on several fronts simultaneously. The human ships moved differently than anything in Zephyrian experience. They accepted damage that would force other vessels to retreat. They used tactics that seemed to prioritize inflicting casualties over preserving their own forces. Marine Sergeant John Kelly led a boarding party that managed to reach a damaged Zephyrian supply ship. His soldiers fought with a ferocity that shocked their alien opponents. "Surrender and you will be treated according to the laws of war," Kelly told the surviving Zephyrian crew. "We do not understand," replied the alien commander. "Why do you fight so hard for a single supply vessel?" "Because it's not about the ship," Kelly said. "It's about making you understand that every victory will cost you more than you want to pay." Back on the flagship, Dr. Carter watched the Zephyrian crew struggle to understand what they were facing. Their computers showed that the human fleet was smaller and less advanced than their own. By all logical calculations, the Zephyrians should be winning easily. Instead, they were taking casualties at a rate that made no sense. Human ships that should have been destroyed continued fighting. Human crews that should have surrendered kept attacking until their vessels were completely crippled. "Dr. Carter," said Krelnax, "why do your people fight this way? They must know they cannot win." Dr. Carter considered his response carefully. "You are thinking about this wrong. You assume we are trying to win a battle. We are not. We are trying to win a war. What is the difference? A battle is about defeating the enemy forces in front of you. A war is about making the enemy decide that continuing to fight costs more than they are willing to pay." Krelnax looked confused, but Captain Morrison, who had been listening to the conversation, nodded in understanding. "They expected us to surrender quickly to avoid casualties," Morrison said. "Instead, we are showing them that we will keep fighting no matter what it costs us. Eventually, they will have to decide if conquering Earth is worth losing half their fleet." The battle raged for hours. Human ships continued to use tactics that seemed insane by conventional standards. Damaged vessels rammed enemy ships instead of retreating. Pilots with failing engines flew their fighters into alien weapon systems. Ground-based missiles targeted alien command ships with no regard for the return fire. As dawn broke over Earth, the casualty reports made sobering reading. Humanity had lost 23 ships and nearly 4,000 crew members. But the Zephyrian fleet had suffered damage to over half their vessels, with 8 ships completely destroyed. More importantly, the psychological impact was devastating. The Zephyrians had never fought an enemy that seemed to welcome death in battle. Their military doctrine was based on the assumption that all intelligent species valued survival above victory. High Commander Vexitar stood in his damaged bridge, staring at the tactical displays. His fleet was still powerful enough to destroy Earth's cities. He could still force humanity to surrender through massive bombardment of civilian targets. But something had changed. The humans had proven they would not give up easily. Any victory would be paid for in blood and ships. The cost of conquering Earth was rising beyond what the Empire had expected to pay. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we are receiving another transmission from the human fleet." This time, Commander Lisa Hayes appeared on screen. She stood in the same command center, but now the displays behind her showed damage assessments and casualty reports. "High Commander Vexitar," she said, "you came here expecting to find a primitive species that would surrender when faced with superior force. Instead, you found humans. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We adapt, we learn, and we fight back." She gestured to the displays behind her. "Today you learned what it costs to attack Earth. Tomorrow, if you choose to continue this war, you will learn what it costs to fight humanity across the galaxy. The choice is yours." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar with a decision that would determine the fate of both species. For the first time in his career, the High Commander was not sure that victory was worth the price. News of the battle at Earth spread across the Zephyrian Empire faster than wildfire. For the first time in 1,000 years, a primitive species had not only resisted the Imperial fleet, but had actually inflicted serious damage on it. On the conquered world of Veltar, former soldiers who had been forced into labor camps whispered excitedly about the humans. Species that had given up hope of freedom began to remember what resistance meant. High Commander Vextar knew he had to act quickly. If word spread that Earth could fight the Empire successfully, rebellion might break out across dozens of worlds. "Send word to Imperial Command," he ordered. "Request immediate reinforcements. We need the 3rd and 5th battle groups." His communications officer looked surprised. "Sir, that would triple the size of our fleet. Is that necessary for one primitive world?" "These humans are not primitive," Vextar replied grimly, "and they are not going to surrender. If we want Earth, we will have to take it by force. Real force." Within days, the Zephyrian reinforcements began arriving. Massive dreadnoughts that had conquered entire star systems. Elite troops that had never known defeat. The Empire was bringing its full military might to bear on humanity, but humans were not waiting passively for the next attack. Admiral Susan Cross commanded the Deep Space Reconnaissance Fleet, 12 fast ships designed for long-range operations. While the main battle fleet defended Earth, her mission was to take the war to the enemy. Intelligence reports show Zephyrian supply convoys moving through the Ross 248 system, she told her captains. "We hit them hard and fast, then disappear before reinforcements arrive." The attack came without warning. Human ships dropped out of hyperspace directly in the path of a Zephyrian convoy. The escort vessels found themselves facing enemies that fought with the same desperate fury that had shocked the main fleet at Earth. Captain Tony Garcia commanded the destroyer UES Lightning. His ship was outnumbered 3-1, but he had studied the alien tactics carefully. "They expect us to retreat when we take damage," he told his crew. "Instead, we get closer. Make them pay for every shot." The Lightning charged straight at the largest Zephyrian escort, ignoring the energy beams that tore through its hull. At point-blank range, human weapons proved devastatingly effective. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire, taking the Lightning with it. But the sacrifice allowed the rest of Admiral Cross's fleet to destroy the entire convoy. Thousands of tons of supplies that would never reach the front lines. Dozens of replacement crew members that would never join their ships. Meanwhile, on Earth, engineer Katie Walsh was working around the clock to complete humanity's secret weapon. The Deep Strike project had been theoretical for years. Now it was becoming reality. "The targeting system is online," she reported to General Stone. "We can hit any target in this solar system with pinpoint accuracy." "Range?" the general asked. "From Earth? We can reach the edge of Zephyrian space. If we launch from the outer system platforms, we can hit their home worlds." General Stone studied the technical specifications. The deep strike weapons were humanity's attempt to level the playing field. If the aliens had superior numbers, humans would have superior reach. How many do we have? 12 are ready for deployment. Another 20 will be completed within the month. The first test came sooner than expected. Zephyrian reinforcements were gathering at a staging area in the asteroid belt, preparing for a massive assault on Earth. General Stone decided to give them a preview of human capabilities. The deep strike weapon launched from a hidden base on Mars. It accelerated to incredible speeds using technology that pushed the boundaries of human science. The Zephyrians detected it too late to intercept. The explosion vaporized 3 Zephyrian capital ships and damaged a dozen others. The aliens found themselves facing an enemy that could strike from across the solar system without warning. But the Empire's response was swift and brutal. If humans wanted to escalate the conflict, the Zephyrians would show them what real escalation looked like. The Second Battle of Earth began with orbital bombardment. Zephyrian dreadnoughts rained fire on military targets across the planet. Cities were spared, but bases, factories, and shipyards suffered devastating damage. Human defenders fought back with everything they had. Ground-based weapons that had been hidden for months revealed themselves, striking at the alien fleet. Missile sites that the Zephyrians thought they had destroyed turned out to be decoys, while the real weapons emerged from underground bunkers. Marine Sergeant John Kelly found himself leading ground forces in urban combat when Zephyrian troops landed in major cities. The aliens had expected quick surrender once they demonstrated their ability to strike at civilian targets. Instead, they found themselves fighting for every street corner. "Sir, the enemy has superior equipment and numbers," reported Lieutenant Danny Wright. "Should we fall back to secondary positions?" "No," Kelly replied, firing at a Zephyrian patrol from behind an overturned vehicle. "We hold here. Make them pay for every block they take." The urban warfare was unlike anything the Zephyrians had experienced. Most species surrendered entire cities rather than see them destroyed in house-to-house fighting. Humans turned their own neighborhoods into battlefields, accepting massive destruction if it meant inflicting casualties on the invaders. Dr. Carter, still aboard the Zephyrian flagship, watched his captors struggle to understand human psychology. "They are fighting in their own cities," said Science Officer Krell Nax. "They must know this will result in massive civilian casualties. Why do they not surrender to protect their people?" "Because they know that surrender will not protect anyone," Dr. Carter replied. "You have shown them what happens to conquered worlds. The choice is not between war and peace. The choice is between dying free or living as slaves." Captain Jake Morrison had been studying the Zephyrian ship systems during his captivity. As an explorer, he had learned to understand alien technology quickly. Now that knowledge might prove useful. "Alan," he whispered to Dr. Carter during a brief moment alone, "I think I know how to escape. But we need to send a signal to Earth. First, the aliens have a weakness in their shield systems." "What kind of weakness?" "Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and solid projectiles, but they have trouble with certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. If Earth could modify their weapons." The conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the alien ship. The Zephyrians had detected another human attack, this one aimed at their command vessel. Lieutenant Commander Ben Rodriguez led the fighter attack with the same desperate courage that had marked all human operations. His squadron of 18 fighters faced odds that should have made victory impossible. "Remember," he told his pilots, "we are not trying to destroy their ship. We are trying to rescue our people and gather intelligence." The fighters swept through the alien defenses like a blade through armor. Half were destroyed in the first pass, but the survivors pressed on. Rodriguez's own ship took critical damage, but he managed to crash land in the flagship's hangar bay. The rescue mission succeeded partly due to Jake Morrison's knowledge of the ship's layout. The human prisoners were freed, but more importantly, they had learned valuable intelligence about Zephyrian technology and tactics. As the war escalated, both sides began to understand they were fighting something unprecedented. The Zephyrians had never encountered a species willing to sacrifice so much for victory. The humans had never faced an enemy with such overwhelming technological superiority. But the balance was shifting in ways that surprised everyone. Captain Rachel Turner, now commanding what remained of Earth's battle fleet, received reports from across the galaxy. Human attacks on Zephyrian supply lines were having an effect beyond simple material damage. Admiral Cross reports that 3 conquered species have begun active resistance operations, her intelligence officer informed her. The Altarians have sabotaged Imperial mining facilities. The Centauri rebels have captured 2 garrison stations. They are inspired by our example? It appears so. For the first time in centuries, subject species believe that the Empire can be defeated. This was the development that High Commander Vextar feared most. The human resistance was spreading like a disease through his empire. Species that had accepted Zephyrian rule for generations were beginning to question Imperial authority. "Sir, we are receiving priority communications from 17 different systems," his communications officer reported. Local governors are requesting military assistance to deal with rebel activity. Vextar realized he faced an impossible choice. He could continue the assault on Earth, but that would leave rebel worlds free to spread their resistance. Or he could divert forces to suppress the rebellions, but that would give Earth time to strengthen its defenses. Either way, the Empire was being forced to fight on multiple fronts against enemies who seemed to prefer death to surrender. Captain Jake Morrison, now free and back on Earth, met with military leaders to share what he had learned about Zephyrian capabilities. They are not invincible, he told the assembled commanders. Their technology is advanced, but it has weaknesses. More importantly, their psychology has weaknesses. They have never fought an enemy that refused to be intimidated. What do you recommend? Asked General Stone. We continue doing exactly what we have been doing. F.